The last bit of mercy, the heavy metal door shuddered under the blows, the clang-clang echoing like nails being driven into my coffin from a past life. Jared, open the door. Can't you hear me? It's Brad. Brad isn't dead yet. Tiffany's voice was shrill, laced with sobbing hysteria, scraping against my eardrums like a rusted blade. I leaned against the cold concrete wall of the underground bunker, taking my time to unscrew the cap of a water bottle. The water was cool as it slid down my throat, suppressing the familiar, rising nausea in my chest. The sickness wasn't caused by the zombies outside. It was caused by the woman inside. Tiffany Case, the campus queen, a greenhouse flower carefully cultivated to never touch the dirt. A pristine, white lily. Or at least, that's what everyone thought before the world ended 3 days ago. I watched her face, flushed red with agitation, crystal tears clinging to her long lashes, perfectly framing that pitiful, damsel-in-distress expression. TCH, if she didn't win an Oscar, it was a waste of talent. In my previous life, that exact expression had softened my heart. She had said the classmate outside was just scratched, that he could still be saved, that we couldn't just leave him to die. She had said, Jared, you're the best guy I know. So I, Jared Cole, the campus's certified nice guy and resident fool, had opened this alloy security door, paid for by my parents' life savings, and built to withstand a small explosion. And then that poor classmate had bitten my throat out. In the moment I fell, I clearly saw Tiffany retreat back inside without a second's hesitation, slamming the locking mechanism. Through the reinforced glass, she had cried, Jared, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean. I remember the sound of that door locking until the moment I died. Now, the familiar script was playing out again. Jared, why are you spacing out? Open the door. Seeing me unresponsive, Tiffany began to shake my arm violently. Her nails were long, a pristine manicured pink, digging into my flesh like knives. I lifted my eyes and looked at her calmly. What did you just say? She froze, seemingly caught off guard by my cold reaction. I said, it's Brad, my boyfriend. He's being chased by zombies, right outside. He's so helpless. Oh, I nodded and took another sip of water. Lots of people are helpless. Who does he think he is? Tiffany's expression solidified. What? What did you say? I said. I articulated every word, my voice not loud, but clear enough to cut through the noise. Why should I save him? He's my boyfriend. We're classmates. She looked like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, fur bristling instantly. Jared, how can you be so cold-blooded? That's a human life. Human life? I laughed. I pointed to the surveillance monitor on the wall. On the screen, a man with a pale, grayish complexion was frantically slamming his head against the door. His eyes were cloudy, saliva dripped from the corner of his mouth, and one arm was twisted at a grotesque angle, revealing deep bite marks that exposed the bone. That wasn't Brad Holland. That was just a hungry walking corpse wearing Brad's skin. Look closely. I walked up to her, invading her personal space, and whispered in a voice only the two of us could hear. That thing isn't human anymore. Open that door and we both die. You die, I die, and all the supplies in this safe house become a pile of useless trash. My voice was soft, like a devil's murmur. Tiffany was frightened by the look in my eyes and took a step back. The panic in her eyes flashed for a second, immediately replaced by a thicker aura of self-righteousness. No, he's still conscious. He's calling for help. She pointed at the screen, her voice trembling. He just called my name. I almost laughed out loud. Lady, that's the unconscious growl of a zombie. You hallucinating that into a cry of love is a level of delusion that belongs in fanfiction. Tiffany, I dropped the smile, giving her a final warning. Don't push me. Push you? Jared, I never thought you were this kind of person. Her eyes turned red as she scrambled for the moral high ground. Where's your conscience? Did a dog eat it? Leaving someone to die, how will you sleep at night? I'll sleep just fine. In my last life, I couldn't sleep because I was dead. This time, I was going to sleep like a baby. I ignored her, turning toward the supply area to check my canned goods. Beef, spam, diced with black beans. A full variety, enough for me to eat alone for 3 years. Seeing me ignore her, Tiffany finally snapped. She rushed to the door, attempting to hit the red emergency release button. In my last life, I fell for this move. I tried to stop her, and that's when the zombie tackled me. But this time, I didn't move. I just watched her quietly. She slammed the button. No alarm sounded. The door didn't budge an inch. She froze, frantically stabbing at the button, but there was no reaction. How? How can this be? She turned back, looking at me in disbelief. I dangled a small USB drive in my hand. Saw the master control override for this door is with me. I smiled, showing my teeth. By the way, after you came in, I deleted your temporary access permissions. Tiffany's face went pale in an instant. The live stream Tiffany's lips trembled, and for the first time, her beautiful eyes showed pure, unadulterated fear. That wasn't acting. That was the genuine reaction of realizing she had gone from the chess player to a pawn. When did you? Right around the time you were crying and screaming for hot water, complaining that the mug wasn't cute enough, I answered indifferently. I walked over to the massive pane of one-way reinforced glass and looked outside with interest. Out there, Brad, or rather ex-Brad, was still tirelessly bashing his head against the door. Every impact left a smear of dark red blood and grayish brain matter on the glass, like a postmodern painting. Jared, what the hell do you want? Tiffany's voice carried a sob, but this time, I heard the faint tremor of someone trying to sound tough while terrified. I want to watch the show, I said. I dragged over a comfortable gaming chair, adjusted the angle, and even grabbed a cold coat from the fridge. Crack fizz. I popped the tab. The bubbles hissed like a devil's symphony. You're crazy. You're a psycho. Tiffany screamed and lunged at me, trying to snatch the master controller from my hand. I sidestepped easily. Wearing high heels, her center of gravity was unstable, and she hit the floor hard. Her expensive white dress smeared against the dust on the floor. Oh, looking at her now, she didn't look so much like a white lily. She looked like a piece of dirty cotton trodden into the mud. Don't rush. I took a sip of Coke, the cold liquid refreshing my mind. The good part hasn't even started yet. As soon as I finished speaking, new figures appeared at the edge of the surveillance screen. Shambling, staggering. Other zombies, drawn by the scent of blood. Tiffany saw them too. Her face went even paler than before. No. No. She crawled up from the floor, pounding on the glass like a madwoman. Brad, run. Run away. Unfortunately, the glass was one way. Brad couldn't see her, nor could he hear her. His entire perception was reduced to a craving for fresh flesh. There were 3 new zombies. One wearing a security uniform, stomach hollowed out, intestines dragging on the ground. One looked like a female student, missing a leg, hopping forward. And one was exceptionally tall and broad, probably a linebacker from the athletics department. Slowly, they surrounded Brad. Brad seemed to sense the danger, stopped banging on the door, and turned clumsily, a threatening growl rolling in his throat. Even zombies fight over food. Truly an interesting sociological observation sample. No, don't. Tiffany cried in despair, her hands clawing futilely at the cold glass, leaving streaks of condensation. Jared, I'm begging you. Please, open the door. If you open the door, I'll do anything. I'll be your girlfriend. I'll be your slave. I turned to look at her and laughed. Tiffany, do you have a misunderstanding about your value? I pointed outside. In the apocalypse, that skin of yours isn't worth a single can of spam. As for your promises, I shrugged. A person who would drag others to their death for so-called love without hesitation, her promises are worth less than used toilet paper. My words were like a knife, piercing her disguise completely. She stared at me blankly, lips moving, but not a word came out. She even forgot to cry. Just then, the battle outside began. The linebacker zombie attacked first, hitting Brad like a tank. Brad was knocked to the ground. The female student and the security guard swarmed him instantly. The scene that followed was straight out of an unrated horror movie. The sound of tearing flesh, the crunch of bones being chewed, the wet noise of meat being pulled apart, transmitted clearly into the safe house through the high-fidelity audio system. Like the most horrific ASMR. Tiffany's eyes widened to their limit. She watched her beloved boyfriend being torn apart alive by 3 monsters. His chest was ripped open, and his still beating heart was yanked out. The meat on his thighs was stripped away in strips. His head was twisted off like opening a bottle cap. Ugh! Tiffany couldn't hold it back anymore. She fell to her knees and vomited violently. The hot water she drank earlier, mixed with stomach acid, splattered all over the floor. A sour, foul stench filled the air instantly. I frowned in disgust and hit the button for the ventilation system. The powerful hum of the air cycler masked the sound of her retching. I continued to enjoy my live stream. The feast lasted about 5 minutes. Brad was picked clean, leaving only a broken skeleton covered in saliva. Sated, the 3 zombies shambled away to find their next target. The world returned to a temporary quiet. Only the postmodern painting of blood and brains remained on the door. I finished the last sip of Coke and burped. All right, show's over. I stood up and walked over to Tiffany, who was limp as mud. She looked up, her face stained with filth, eyes hollow and lifeless, like a puppet whose strings have been cut. Now, I looked down at her, a cruel smile curling the corners of my mouth. It's your turn. Waste utilization. Tiffany's pupils contracted sharply. A spark of life finally returned to her hollow eyes, ignited by sheer terror. What? What are you going to do? Her voice was hoarse, like broken bellows. Don't misunderstand. I crouched down to eye level, my smile becoming gentle and harmless, just like the nice guy Jared from before the end of the world. I'm not some pervert who enjoys torture. I pulled a pack of wet wipes from my pocket, took one out, and handed it to her. Clean yourself up. You're a mess. She looked at me hesitantly, like a frightened rabbit. Finally, she took the wipe and scrubbed her face frantically. I just think, I said slowly, watching her pathetic state, you can't eat my food and drink my water for free, right? My gaze swept over the underground bunker, over 1,000 square feet of space. Independent water filtration, solar battery banks, enough food for one person for 3 years, medicine, weapons. The final legacy left to me by my engineer father, who suffered from doomsday anxiety. In my last life, I made this place a sanctuary for everyone. In this life, it was my kingdom alone. What do you want me to do? Tiffany's voice was still trembling. Simple. I stood up and walked to the supply pile, kicking a canvas bag that came up to my waist. See these? The bag was full of rice and flour. In the apocalypse, food is hard currency. But living on canned food alone won't work. I need fresh vegetables. I pointed to the cultivation rack in the corner. There was hydroponic equipment, but we lacked seeds and keen nutrient solutions. 2 days from now, when the rain stops, I'm going to the Agroscience Research Center across the street. It has everything we need. Tiffany's face went a shade paler. Go out. She subconsciously glanced at the blood-smeared door. Just the thought of stepping out made her body shake uncontrollably. You don't dare? I raised an eyebrow. She bit her lower lip, afraid to say yes, afraid to say no. It doesn't matter if you don't dare. My smile widened. You have another choice. I walked to the door, gently stroking the cold, alloy surface. You can choose to go out right now and keep your Brad company. Since you love him so much, dying for love would be quite the romantic tale, wouldn't it? No, I don't want to. Tiffany screamed and lunged forward, hugging my leg like it was the last straw. I don't want to die. Jared, I don't want to die. I'll go with you. I'll go. Tears, snot, and the sour smell of vomit smeared onto my pant leg. I frowned in disgust and kicked her away. Then shut up and save your energy. I threw a set of camouflage fatigues and a pair of combat boots at her. Put these on. Stop wandering around in those rags. It's an eyesore. I watched her frantically change clothes, feeling absolutely nothing. Sympathy? Pity? In my last life, when the zombies were pulling my intestines out, those emotions had already been eaten clean. People like Tiffany are typical, exquisite egoists. Their kindness is conditional, built on the foundation of their absolute safety and requiring no cost to themselves. They enjoy the moral superiority of saving the world, but never consider the disaster their kindness brings to others. In their eyes, the sacrifice of others is taken for granted. And the first thing I, having lived again, was going to do was teach them, your kindness is expensive, and I refuse to pay the bill. Not only that, I'm going to make you tear up that cheap kindness and swallow a whole. 2 days later, the rain finally stopped. The sky took on a sickly, grayish-white hue. The streets were a mess of accumulated water mixed with black blood, scattered limbs, and debris. Occasionally, a few zombies wandered aimlessly. I wore a huge hiking backpack and held a fire axe in my hand. At my waist was a cookery knife from my father's collection. Tiffany also carried a small pack with water and some first aid supplies. Her face was pale, and she followed closely behind me, her knuckles white as she gripped an entrenching shovel. Using the master controller, I slowly opened the heavy alloy door. Creak! The harsh sound was like the gates of hell opening. A thick stench of rot and blood hit us in the face. Tiffany dry-heaved again. Stay close, I whispered. If you want to live, remember 3 things. First, don't make a sound. Second, don't fall behind. Third, I looked back, giving her a cold stare. Don't be stupid again. With that, I stepped into the hunting ground that now belonged to me. Newbie tutorial. The moment I stepped out of the safe house, the sunlight made me squint. The apocalyptic sun had no warmth. It cast only a layer of pale halo, making the whole world look like a faded old photograph. The rotting smell in the air was thicker here. I pulled 2 N95 masks from the side pocket of my backpack, put one on myself, and tossed the other to Tiffany. She caught it like a lifeline, putting it on desperately, greedily breathing the filtered air. Moo! I didn't choose the main road, but ducked into a narrow back alley. This was a shortcut students used to take back to the dorms. High walls of dormitory buildings on both sides formed a natural barrier. The alley was quiet, save for our footsteps. Tiffany's combat boots splashed in the puddles, splash, splash, sounding incredibly loud in the dead silence. I stopped abruptly and glared back at her. She immediately held her breath in fright, moving onto her tiptoes, her movements becoming careful. At least she wasn't completely brainless. I scoffed internally. In my last life, I led a group of survivors, her included. That journey was a disaster. People talked loudly and attracted zombies. People fell behind out of fear and got swarmed. People fought over a single bottle of water. And Tiffany was always the one crying the most, causing the most trouble, and using kindness to emotionally hostage everyone. In this life, I only needed one tool. A living tool that could carry supplies, act as bait, and be slightly useful at critical moments. The alley wasn't long. We soon reached the end. The exit faced the side gate of the Agroscience Center. The iron gate was locked with a heavy chain, but a section of the wall next to it had collapsed, leaving a waist-high gap. I crouched down, observing the situation outside. In the plaza near the entrance, 5 or 6 zombies were wandering. They moved slowly, low-level common zombies. As long as we didn't get surrounded, dealing with them wouldn't be hard. The plan is simple. I lowered my voice, speaking to Tiffany behind me. I go in first and take out the 2 near the entrance. You follow me, keep a 15-foot distance. Once inside, you guard the gap. I'll search for supplies. I guard the gap. Tiffany's voice trembled. How do I guard it? I looked at the entrenching shovel in her hand. See a zombie, chop at its head. Don't hack the body, it's useless. Chop the head or the neck. I handed her my fire axe. Take this. It's heavier, hits harder. Then I took the lightweight shovel from her. She stared blankly as she took the axe, the weight making her stumble. Why? Because I stood up, rotating my wrist and weighing the shovel. I'm afraid your hands will shake and you'll put the axe on my back. Whereas I can kill them even with this thing. Without waiting for her reaction, I rolled through the gap in the wall. My movements were crisp, making no excess noise. The nearest zombie, looking like a researcher in a lab coat, had its back to me, feasting on a disemboweled corpse. I crouched, approaching silently. 10 feet, 6 feet, 3 feet. Now, I exploded into motion, the shovel becoming a blur as I swung the edge hard into the back of its neck. Thwack! A dull sound. The blade wasn't sharp, but with my full force behind it, it embedded itself into the spine. The researcher's zombie stiffened, its chewing motion stopped, and then it slumped like a pile of mud. It didn't even have time to growl. One down. Another zombie, a student in gym clothes, was attracted by the noise and turned its head. It saw me, a glint of greed in its cloudy eyes, and opened a foul-smelling mouth to roar as it lunged. I didn't retreat. In my last life, I only ran. But having died once, my threshold for fear was high. The moment it reached me, I sidestepped violently and tripped it. It lost its balance and fell forward. I spun with the momentum, leaped high, gripped the shovel with both hands, and drove the point down into the back of its head with everything I had. Squelch, like a watermelon bursting. Red and white splattered everywhere. The student zombie twitched twice and went still. 2. Clean and efficient. I shook the filth off the shovel and looked back at the wall gap. Tiffany was staring at me, mouth agape, her pretty face written with shock and disbelief. To her, I should still be Jared the gentle, kind weakling who wouldn't hurt a fly. Not this cold-blooded monster killing zombies like chopping vegetables. Weave hill. She snapped out of it, scrambling through the gap on hands and knees, dragging the axe, and making a harsh scraping noise against the concrete. Trying to invite them all to dinner? I asked coldly. She flinched and hugged the axe to her chest. The remaining 3 zombies were already shuffling toward us. Ready? I asked her. I. She couldn't form a sentence. Listen, I stared into her eyes, enunciating every word. Right now it's you or them. That axe is the only reason you see tomorrow's sun. If you want to live, then kill. I roared and charged first. This time, I didn't choose stealth. I wanted her to see clearly how to fight in the apocalypse. Like a leopard, I rushed a zombie. It swiped at me with sharp claws. I ducked low, the shovel swinging up from a tricky angle to slice through its wrist. Snap! The sound of bone breaking. Its hand fell to the ground. Before it could react, I closed in and slammed my shoulder into its chest. It toppled backward. My knee drove into its neck, pinning it to the ground. Then the shovel point found its eye socket and drove deep. Hilt deep. I pulled the shovel out, warm blood splattering my face. I wiped it off and looked at the remaining 2 zombies and the petrified Tiffany. "What are you waiting for?" I bellowed. "Waiting for them to eat your brain." My roar finally triggered her survival instinct. One zombie was closing in on her. She looked at that rotting, twisted face, smelled the stench, and finally let out a hysterical scream. "Yeah." She squeezed her eyes shut and swung the fire axe wildly. Thud! The heavy axe, guided by blind luck, smashed into the zombie's shoulder, practically severing half its upper body. It collapsed but continued to crawl toward her. "The head!" I shouted. Tiffany opened her eyes, saw the monster struggling on the ground, and raised the axe again. This time, there was a trace of insane ruthlessness in her eyes. D. She used all her strength. 1 chop, 2 chops, 3, hacking madly at the zombie's head, until that head became an indistinguishable pile of meat paste. When I finished the last zombie, Tiffany was still kneeling on the ground, gasping for air. She was trembling all over, her face a mix of blood, tears, and sweat. But she was alive. I walked over and handed her my canteen. "Welcome to the Apocalypse Noob Village." I looked at her and gave a smile that could technically be called friendly. "Congratulations on completing your first practical tutorial." An unexpected survivor, the inside of the Agroscience Center was much cleaner than the outside. Since school was on break and the location was remote, there weren't many people here when the apocalypse hit. The door to the lab building was locked. I split the lock with a few hacks of the fire axe. A smell of earth mixed with plants and formalin drifted out. Complex, but much better than the rot outside. "Guard the door. Scream if you see anything," I ordered Tiffany. After the practical tutorial, she was much more obedient. Although her face was still pale, the panic in her eyes had been replaced by a certain numbness. She nodded like a puppet, hugged the axe, and leaned against the doorframe. I ignored her and headed straight for the seed resource bank on the 2nd floor. This was my main objective. In my previous life, a few survivors and I found a massive cache of vegetable, fruit, and grain seeds here. Relying on them, we survived for 6 months at an abandoned farm. The door to the resource bank had a keypad lock. I punched in the numbers skillfully. Beep, access granted. The door opened. In the last timeline, 2 people died trying to force this door open. The code was something I overheard an agro professor mention right before I died. Rebirth's greatest advantage is information asymmetry. Inside, rows of shells are lined with vacuum-sealed bags of seeds. Potatoes, corn, tomatoes, greens, pumpkins. I looked at them greedily. They weren't seeds. They were life. They were the future. I opened my hiking pack and started stuffing it frantically, prioritizing crops with short growth cycles and high yields. Potatoes were a must, high starch, filling. Tomatoes and greens for vitamins. I also found precious herbal seeds like honeysuckle and woadroot, lifesavers in a world without doctors. After filling a large bag, I wasn't satisfied. I went to the 3rd floor's plant nutrition and fertilizer lab. There were various concentrated nutrient solutions here, much more efficient and portable than bulky fertilizer bags. I was looting happily when a short, sharp scream from Tiffany came from downstairs, followed by the sound of a heavy object hitting the floor. My heart sank. Trouble? I immediately dropped what I was holding, drew the cookery from my belt, and moved silently like a cat, rushing downstairs. To my surprise, there were no zombies at the door. Only Tiffany lying on the ground, unconscious. The heavy fire axe lay by her hand. She had a cut on her forehead that was bleeding, looked like she hit something when she fell. I frowned, walked over quickly, and checked her breathing. Still breathing. Just fainted. Useless waste, can't even guard a door. I was about to wake her up when, out of the corner of my eye, I caught something in a nearby locked lab. Rare plant cultivation room. There was a small observation window on the door. I could have sworn I saw a shadow flash behind it. My heart jumped into my throat. Living people. I gripped the knife tighter, inching toward the door step by step. Instead of looking through the window immediately, I pressed my ear against the cold door panel. Inside, there was extremely faint, suppressed breathing. More than one person. I took a deep breath and suddenly looked up through the window. My gaze met a pair of eyes filled with equal parts terror and vigilance. It was a girl. She looked about my age, wearing black-framed glasses, pale-faced, but with unusually bright eyes. Seeing me, she shrank back in fear. Behind her, I saw 2 guys holding dissection scalpels and an iron bar, watching the door nervously. 3 survivors. In my last life, when I came here, this place was empty. It seemed my rebirth had already shifted the world's trajectory slightly. What to do? Save them? Or leave them? My brain calculated rapidly. 3 burdens? Or 3 helpers? How do they survive? How many supplies do they have? What is their character like? I didn't identify myself immediately. Instead, I slowly raised my hand to show I meant no harm. Then, I pointed to myself, then to Tiffany on the floor, and finally pointed outside, mouthing zombies and mimicking a shambling motion. The girl inside seemed to understand. She hesitated, whispering with the 2 guys behind her. The tall guy looked at me warily and shook his head. The shorter guy seemed tempted. Finally, the girl with glasses made the decision. She nodded at me. Then, I heard the slight click of the lock opening from the inside. The door cracked open a sliver. The girl peeked out, her voice barely a whisper. Did you come to save us? I looked at her and didn't answer the question. Instead, I asked on my own. Do you guys have food? In the apocalypse, this is the only opening line with any value. The girl paused, then understood. She nodded. Yes. We have some compressed biscuits and water. Enough for how long? If we ration, maybe another week. A week. Better than I expected. They weren't total dead weight. Is it safe inside? I asked. Safe, the girl replied. This cultivation room has a reinforced door. We blocked the vents too. I nodded. I had made a preliminary judgment. These 3 didn't look like brainless saints like Tiffany. They knew self-preservation, rationing, and teamwork. Maybe we could work together. Without hesitating, I grabbed the unconscious Tiffany by the ankle and dragged her into the lab like a dead dog. Then, I shut and locked the door behind me. Outside isn't safe. Stay here for now. The 2 guys frowned at my rough handling. The tall guy couldn't help but speak up. Hey, can't you be a little gentler with a girl? I looked up, glancing at him coldly. Gentler. I dropped Tiffany on the floor and walked up to him. He was taller than me, but forced back by my aggression, he subconsciously took a step back. I tapped his cheek with the flat of my blade. Kids stow that cheap sympathy. In the apocalypse, only 2 types of people survive, the strong and the useful. I pointed at Tiffany on the floor. And her type, who only knows how to scream and drag people down. I leaned into his ear, whispering so only he could hear, doesn't even qualify as emergency rations. The tall guy's face went white instantly. A new team. A tense atmosphere filled the cultivation room. My emergency rations joke had clearly terrified these greenhouse flowers, especially the tall guy, who looked at me like I was a cannibal. I ignored them, finding a corner to drop my pack and organize the scavenged supplies. Seeds, nutrient solutions, medicine. These were the foundation of my survival. People? People are the most unreliable variable in the apocalypse. The girl with glasses was much calmer than the 2 guys. She watched me for a while, then walked over. Maya Brooks. That's Caleb Stone, and he's Leo Patel. She pointed to the 2 guys. I didn't lift my eyes, continuing to count seed packets. Jared Cole. Maya didn't seem to mind my coldness. She crouched down, looking at the vacuum seal bags, eyes gleaming. Did you anticipate this happening? Smart question. Not asking why I came, but asking why I had such specific targets in preparation. I stopped what I was doing and finally looked at her properly. Black frames, bob cut, faded t-shirt. Ordinary, someone you'd lose in a crowd. But her eyes were bright, revealing a calmness and logic specific to science majors. Something like that. I gave a vague answer. Couldn't exactly say I was a time traveler. These seeds, are you planning to grow them yourself? She asked again. What else? Keep them as family heirlooms. I retorted. She choked a bit, but adjusted quickly. Maybe we can cooperate. She finally stated her purpose. Oh, I was interested. Cooperate how? The 3 of us are botany majors. Maya, push your glasses up. We know more about how to cultivate these seeds and mix nutrient solutions than you do. And you? She glanced at the knife at my waist and the blood on my clothes. You can fight better than us. A fair trade. Technical skill for martial protection. Reasonable. Why should I work with you? I looked at her. I can live perfectly fine on my own. But you'll live hard. Maya held my gaze without flinching. You need time to scavenge, time to fight, and time to rest. One person's energy is limited. Besides, she glanced at Tiffany, still unconscious on the floor. You're already not alone, are you? I fell silent. She was right. Tiffany, that waste, while I truly wanted to throw her to the zombies, was currently a liability consuming my resources. If I could use these 3 for logistics and production, I could focus on combat and exploration. It was a profitable deal, but I couldn't agree too easily. In the apocalypse, things easily gained are not cherished. I had to make them understand who led this team. Cooperation is fine, I said slowly, but I call the shots. All supplies are distributed by me. All actions follow my command. If anyone has a problem or dares to be stupid like her. My gaze landed on Tiffany again. I don't mind making my team a party of one again. My words were full of unquestionable dictatorship. Caleb, the tall guy, immediately objected. Why? We're equal partners. I didn't waste breath. I pulled a pack of compressed biscuits and a bottle of water from my bag and tossed them in front of him. Because of this, then I took out a chocolate bar, snapped it in half, and handed a piece to Maya. This is a down payment. The other half comes when I see your value. Caleb stared at the biscuits, face flushing red. Leo tugged at his sleeve, signaling him not to be impulsive. Maya took the chocolate. She didn't eat it immediately, but carefully put it in her pocket. She looked at me and nodded solemnly. Deal. We listen to you. Maya, Caleb shouted indignantly. Caleb, shut up. Maya turned back, cutting him off coldly. Do you want to keep gnawing on moldy bread? But do you want to starve here and become dinner for those things outside? He has food, combat power, and most importantly, a plan. Following him is the only way we might survive. Maya's words left Caleb speechless. He looked at me, then at the biscuits, and finally submitted, silently picking them up. Good. A smart leader, a hothead who can be reasoned with, and a follower. This team prototype was 100 times better than the mob I led in my last life. Just then, Tiffany groaned on the floor, waking up. She clutched her forehead, looking blankly at the strange environment and strangers. When her eyes landed on me, they filled with fear instantly. Jared. I ignored her. I turned to Maya. You come here. Maya walked over. I pointed at Tiffany and issued my first order. From now on, she's your responsibility. Teach her how to work. If she disobeys or slacks off. I paused, showing a nasty smile. Starve her. Hearing this, Tiffany's face became uglier than a corpse. Maya looked at Tiffany, then at me, her expression complex. But she nodded. Understood, Captain. Captain. Heh, I like that title. Establishing order night fell. Without power, we only had a rechargeable emergency lantern. The dim yellow light stretched everyone's shadows long against the walls, swaying like ghosts. Dinner was compressed biscuits and water. I gave Maya, Caleb, and Leo half a biscuit each. As for Tiffany, I gave her a quarter. She looked at the pathetic crumbs in her hand, then at the others, and her eyes reddened immediately. Why? Why is mine so small? She choked out. Because you did nothing today, I answered matter-of-factly without looking up. You fainted. Your work was done by the three of them. After bringing the seeds and nutrients inside, I had Maya and the others start counting and categorizing them for planting. They worked all afternoon. Tiffany slept all afternoon. I was injured. She pointed to the cut on her forehead, trying to garner sympathy. Oh, I nodded. Do you want to trade your injury with the zombies outside for a biscuit? Tiffany choked on her words, lowering her head to nibble at the crumbs aggrievedly. Caleb, seeing her pitiful state, seemed to feel sorry for her and moved to share some of his. My cold gaze swept over him. Caleb, his hand shook. Did you forget what I said? I reminded him. I distribute the supplies. You want to be special and challenge my rules. I didn't. Caleb quickly pulled his hand back, not daring to look at Tiffany. This was the effect I wanted. Establishing order meant breaking old sentiments and morals. In the apocalypse, sympathy is the cheapest and most deadly commodity. I had to purge this virus right at the start. After dinner, I arranged a watch. First shift, Leo and Caleb. Second shift, me and Maya. What about Tiffany? Leo asked subconsciously. I scoffed. She's our alarm clock. If zombies break in, her screaming should wake us all up. My words sent a chill through everyone. Tiffany turned pale and shrank into the corner, daring not to make a sound. I ignored them, finding a corner furthest from the door, hugging my pack, and closing my eyes. I needed rest, but I didn't truly sleep. Trusting your back to others in the apocalypse is suicide. I was only resting my eyes, ears alert to every sound. The first shift was quiet. Caleb and Leo were nervous but dutiful. For the second shift, Maya sat beside me, hugging her knees. She stared quietly at the observation window. You aren't afraid of me? I asked suddenly. She paused, turned to look at me. In the dim light, without her glasses, her eyes looked even clearer. I am, she admitted. You act like a tyrant. Then why follow me? Because a tyrant's rules feel safer than a saint's kindness. She hit the nail on the head. I was surprised. This quiet girl was far sharper than I imagined. You seem to really hate her, she said, referring to Tiffany. Wouldn't call it hate. Maya shook her head. I've seen too many people like her. She continued. They're used to being the center of the universe, used to using tears and weakness to get everything. They think the world should revolve around them. In peacetimes, Maybe that's a survival strategy. But now, it's a death wish. Well said. I genuinely praised her. I felt that pulling her into the team might be the best decision since my rebirth. We were the same kind of people. Cold, rational, doing whatever it takes. Actually, you could be a little nicer to her, Maya said suddenly. I frowned. What? Your bleeding heart is acting up. No. She shook her head, a sly smile appearing, one I hadn't seen before. I mean, a tool filled with hope working hard is much more useful than a desperate waste waiting to die. Carrot and stick is always the best management technique. You've given her enough stick. Maybe give her a carrot occasionally. I looked at her, silent. I admitted she had a point. My hatred from the previous life made my handling of Tiffany too emotional. My goal was to use her, squeeze out her value, not just torture her. Pushing her to total despair where she gave up completely did me no good. What's your idea? I asked. Simple, Maya said. Tomorrow, give her a whole biscuit, then give her a simple task. If she finishes it, keep giving her food. If not, take it away. Let her understand that to eat, she has to trade labor, not tears. I looked at Maya, feeling a distinct appreciation, or maybe the excitement of meeting a peer. Deal, I nodded. We'll do it your way. I realized this apocalypse might be much more interesting than I thought. Last time, I was a lamb fighting alone. This time, I found a wolf in sheep's clothing to run with. Carrot and stick early the next morning, following Maya's advice, I gave Tiffany a whole compressed biscuit. When she held the complete, heavy packet, she froze, looking at me in disbelief, tears instantly welling up. What are you crying for? I said coldly. You earned this. Earned it. She was confused. Today, your task, I pointed to a pile of glass lab equipment in the corner, is to clean all of these and sort them. Do it well, you get a whole one for dinner. If you slack off, or break one. I held up half a biscuit. Tomorrow morning, this is all you get. Tiffany's eyes lit up. It was the light of hope in despair. She didn't cry or complain. She nodded vigorously, grabbed the biscuit, and ran to the corner like a squirrel guarding its nut, eating it like it was treasure. Maya shot me a look that said, "See, told you." I shrugged noncommittally. We began formal base construction. Maya was a true botany whiz. She and Leo quickly mapped out a cultivation zone. Using the existing climate control and sterile environment, they set up simple hydroponic racks. Caleb handled the heavy lifting. I conducted a thorough security check and reinforcement of the lab building. I blocked all entry points with steel cabinets and desks. I found a small diesel generator. Fuel was low, but good for emergencies. The best surprise was in a chemical storage room. Raw materials for explosives and Molotov cocktails. Nitric acid, glycerin, sulfur. Dangerous goods in peace, reliable weapons now. Tiffany, contrary to her nature, worked earnestly. Scrubbing beakers was simple but tiring work. She did it with extreme effort, as if washing a lifetime of dishes. By noon, she even asked if we needed help. Though Maya refused her with finish your own work first, her attitude had done a 180. Watching this, it felt surreal. A stable base, a specialized team, food, water, weapons increasing steadily. This was 10,000 times better than my start in the last life. By evening, everyone was exhausted, but I announced a daily debrief. My rule. Today we finished the cultivation racks. Seeding starts tomorrow, Maya reported first. But we need more water. The lab's purified reserves are low. Water isn't an issue, I said. Roof tank holds enough for a long time. The issue is quality. I can handle that. Leo pushed his glasses up. I can rig a filtration system with lab equipment. Good. I nodded. Second issue, food. Biscuits and Spam won't cut it long term. I know a place, I said. The campus dining hall. Basement level has a massive freezer. Should be tons of frozen meat and veg. The dining hall? Caleb paled. That's high traffic. Must be swarming with zombies. Risk equals reward, I said flatly. We can't turtle here forever. To live better, we have to go out. But it's too dangerous. Caleb wavered. So we prepare. I looked at Maya. Maya, Leo, focus on water. Caleb, you're with me. We're making weapons. Weapons? I smiled, pointing toward the chemical storage. Some toys that will give us a surprise. Meeting adjourned. Tiffany kept her head down. At dinner distribution, I gave her a whole biscuit and a small piece of beef jerky. Today's bonus. She looked up, lips moving to speak, but stayed silent and took it. I knew the carrot worked. Now, she was a tamed animal, working herself to death for a taste of sweetness. Late night, my watch with Maya. You're really going to the dining hall? Maya asked, worried. Have to. I looked at the dark night. Can't pin all hope on veggies that might not even grow. I'm going with you, she said. You? I was surprised. Aren't you scared? Terrified, she admitted. But I'm more scared of starving. Plus, another person is another pair of hands. I can carry stuff. I looked at her determined eyes. Okay, tomorrow we go together. I realized this team was evolving in an unexpected direction. I thought I'd be a solitary dictator, but now I seem to have a comrade. The thought was foreign. The betrayal of my last life made me trust no one. But Maya, smart, rational, slightly cold Maya, was chipping away at the ice around my heart. Dining hall nightmare 2 days later, we set out. Me, Maya, and a Caleb eager to prove himself. Leo and Tiffany stayed behind. We upgraded our gear. Caleb had the fire axe. I had the cookery and a homemade flamethrower strapped to my back, a modified fire extinguisher filled with high-purity alcohol. Maya had a large pack and a baseball bat. Everyone carried Molotov cocktails. The route to the dining hall was dangerous. We stuck to the shadows, avoiding the main roads. We encountered several zombie groups. Under my training and the threat of death, Caleb wasn't a rookie anymore. He swung the axe clumsily but bravely. Maya showed amazing calm. She found the perfect timing to crack zombie skulls from behind with the bat. Clean kills. She was a natural assassin. The dining hall loomed like a dormant beast. The main doors were barricaded from inside, but ground floor windows were shattered. We climbed in carefully. The mess hall was chaos. Overturned tables, dried blood, picked clean bones. The air smelled of rotting food and rotting flesh. Freezer is in the basement, I whispered. Follow me. We found the kitchen. The stairwell to the basement was blocked by a fallen metal shelf covered in pots and pans. Caleb, give me a hand. We shifted it just enough to squeeze through. I'll scout, I said. You two cover the top. I unslung the flamethrower, taking only the knife, and squeezed through. The stairwell was pitch black, lit only by my tactical light. Dust danced in the beam. The walls were covered in dried scratch marks. I reached the bottom. A chill hit me. The massive silver freezer door was ajar. My heart spiked. Why open? Someone beat us to it? I pushed the heavy door. Creak. A stench of blood and cold air rushed out. Inside, mounds of frozen meat and veg were covered in frost. A huge hall, but in the middle lay several bodies. Strange deaths. Not bitten, but purple-faced, frozen to death. Clutching hams and chickens. I frowned. It was eerie. I kicked a body, solid as rock. Then I heard it. A faint clack-clack of teeth chattering. From the back of the freezer, I swept my light. Under a shelf, a curled-up figure. A chef in a thin uniform, shivering violently, lips purple, but alive. Help! Me. Another survivor? Who are you? What happened? I'm a cook. He stuttered. Doomsday. We hid in the freezer. Thought we were safe. But they tried to go out for food. And that thing killed them. What thing? Suddenly, a skittering sound came from the ventilation ducts above. Louder, closer, clang. A vent grate fell. A shadow dropped from the ceiling, lightning fast. I rolled back instinctively. My light caught it. My pupils contracted to pinpoints. A zombie, but unlike any I'd seen. Small, childlike size, but limbs elongated like spider. Skin gray-black, muscles coiled. Eyes glowing with scarlet, cunning intelligence. Claws like black daggers. An evolved one. A liquor prototype. In my last life, these didn't appear until much later. Why were they here now? Run! The cook screamed, scrambling for the door. He was too weak. The spider monster leaped, a black bolt of lightning, landing on his back. SHK. Claws pierced his chest effortlessly. The cook went limp. The monster didn't eat. It looked up, scarlet eyes locking onto me. It licked the blood from its claws with a long, forked tongue. Its eyes held mockery, like a cat playing with a mouse. I turned and ran for the door. Fighting this head-on was suicide. My only advantage was the terrain. As I turned, it moved, skittering along the wall, a blur attempting to cut off my retreat. FCK. I cursed, sliding under its lunge, putting my weight into a baseball slide. A foul wind blew over my head. Close. I scrambled up, bolting for the stairs. Jared, what's wrong? Caleb yelled from above. Don't come down. Block the door. Big monster. I roared. Just as I reached the threshold, the wind hit my neck again. Too late to dodge. I threw the cookery backward blindly and dumped the contents of my pack, jars, cans, behind me to create an obstacle. Clang. The knife sparked against its claws. The impact numbed my hand. The clutter slowed it for a fraction of a second. I dove through the door. I spun around, slamming the heavy door shut, but a long, scaled claw jammed into the crack, holding it open. The strength was immense. Through the gap, red eyes stared at me with cruel laughter. Jared. Maya and Caleb saw the claw. Terrified. Molotov, I yelled. Throw it inside. Maya reacted first. She lit a bottle and threw it over my head into the gap. Whomp. The fire exploded inside the freezer. The alcohol met the cold air, hissing. The monster shrieked, fearing the fire, and retracted its claw. I slammed the door. Bang. I threw the bolt. Block it, Caleb, and I shoved a rack of potatoes against the door. Thud. Thud. The door shook violently. The bolt started to bend. Flamethrower. I grabbed the tank from the floor where I left it. Back up. I aimed the nozzle at the crack. Whoosh. A 3-meter tongue of fire poured into the seam. Screech. An unearthly scream of agony came from inside. The banging stopped. The smell of burnt protein drifted out. I sprayed for a full minute until the tank ran dry. Silence. I collapsed, gasping, soaked in cold sweat. That was closer than my death in the last life. What was that? Caleb stammered. Don't know. Elite. I couldn't tell them about evolution. Let's go, Maya said, her voice hoarse. No. I looked at the blackened door, a crazy glint in my eyes. We stay. What? The thing, I lick my dry lips, is evolved. It has something inside it. A core. In my last life, we learned these monsters had energy crystals in their brains. Eating them granted strength, maybe even powers. It was the only way to change fate. The risk was worth it. The new dawn, we waited an hour for the fire to die down. I finally convinced them to stay with promises of power and change. We cleared the barricade. I pushed the door open. A heavy burnt smell assaulted us. Inside, everything was black. My flashlight swept over the corpse. It was a piece of charcoal. Dead. We breathed a collective sigh of relief. I'll check. I walked in. I cracked the charred skull with the blunt side of the axe. Inside the ash, a fingernail-sized, blood-red crystal glowed. A core. I reached for it, my hands shaking with anticipation. Don't touch it. Maya grabbed my wrist. It looks toxic. Bright colors in nature mean poison. Plus, unknown viruses. She was right. I was too excited, forgetting basic safety. She used a sample box and tweezers from her pack to secure it. We looted the meat, stuffing our backpacks full. Before leaving, Maya found a locker with an electronic lock. Scribbles of numbers were scrawled nearby. Kitchen staff. Math genius. I remembered a forum post from before the apocalypse about a chef who used pi as his passwords. I pulled out my phone, accessing the offline encyclopedia I had saved. Pi, decimals 58 to 61. 93, 99. Beep. Open. Inside sat a greasy notebook and an old military satellite phone. My breath hitched. Communication. Hope. The notebook. Anatomy of the kill. Not recipes. A guide to dismantling biology efficiently. A skill book in disguise. I grabbed both. This haul was life-changing. Back at the base, we feasted on steak. Morale was higher than it had ever been. I showed them the phone. 1 bar of battery. 1 chance. Everyone stared at it. Hope. Greed. Especially Tiffany. She looked at it with a mix of jealousy and desperation. It was her ticket out of this hellhole. I announced mandatory combat training for tomorrow. Then, went to sleep. But I laid a trap. I deliberately left the satellite phone in my backpack, placing it near the table instead of keeping it on my person. I slept near it, feigning deep sleep. Deep in the night, I heard rustling. Tiffany. She crept to the bag and stole the phone. To get out of the cultivation room, she had to bypass the perimeter alarms. She took off her jacket, gently draped it over the crude tripwires I had set to muffle them, and carefully crawled over. She went to the hallway to hide. She pressed the SOS button. She didn't know I had disconnected the speaker. She didn't know the military SOS broadcasts GPS coordinates continuously on all frequencies once activated. She thought it was broken. She tried to return it. I opened my eyes, staring into the darkness. What are you doing? I turned on the lights. Confrontation. Tiffany fell to her knees, the phone clattering to the floor. I just wanted to look. Look in the hallway. I pulled my Bluetooth earpiece from my ear, showing it to her. It was connected to a listening device I had planted. I heard you mash the button. Her face went gray. You signaled the world. Every monster within 100 miles knows fresh meat is here. Everyone else paled, realizing the implication. Traitor, Maya said softly but firmly. She has to go. Please. No. Tiffany begged, sobbing. I won't kill you, I said coldly. Tomorrow morning, I open the door. You leave. Sink or swim. Morning came too quickly. The sky was gray. The streets were eerily quiet. It was the calm before the storm. The SOS had brought hunters, not shamblers. I tossed Tiffany a water bottle and a fruit knife. Get out. She walked out, trembling, looking back with pure hate in her eyes. I locked the door behind her. What now? Caleb asked, his voice shaking. We gamble. I took out the red core. Is it safe? Leo asked. Maybe I die. Maybe I become a monster. I didn't hesitate. I tossed it into my mouth. Pain. Fire in my veins. It felt like my bones were breaking and reforming. I screamed in agony. But then, power. Raw, explosive power surged through me. My senses heightened. I could hear a rat skittering blocks away. I stood up, feeling reborn. I punched the concrete wall. Boom! A hole the size of a basin appeared in the solid rock. The three of them stared at me in shock. I looked out the window at the silent, deadly city. Come on in, I whispered to the apocalypse. I'm waiting. Story complete.